I trusted him like a brother, and he betrayed me at the most difficult moment of my life. I don't know why I'm posting this here. Maybe it's to finally get it off my chest. Maybe I just want someone, anyone, to believe me. Or maybe I just want to see the words written down, so I can convince myself it really happened, that I didn't imagine the whole thing like everyone around me wants me to think. This story isn't about ghosts. It's not about monsters hiding under beds or anything supernatural. At least, I don't think it is. But it is about a man. A man I once called my best friend. A man I would have taken a bullet for. And a man who, one rainy October night in 2016, shattered my life in a way I still can't understand. His name was Casey. We met in the 2nd grade. I remember because he stole my peanut butter sandwich and tried to trade it for a juice box. I punched him. He laughed. From that moment, we were inseparable. We had the kind of friendship that felt more like a blood bond, the kind you only see in movies. We built forts together, skipped school together, got into trouble together, and when the world seemed too big or too cruel, we turned to each other. In high school, we went through hell and back. Casey's dad left when he was 13, just vanished one day. No goodbye, no note, just gone. His mom drank too much, worked too little, and when she was around, she wasn't kind. I saw the bruises once, though Casey never talked about it. My parents weren't much better, cold, distant, obsessed with appearances, so we became each other's lifelines. After graduation, I stayed in our town, a small place in northern Oregon that nobody ever leaves unless they're desperate. Casey did leave, though. Got into some college 3 states away, but we talked every week. Sometimes daily. Then he dropped out, no warning, no reason. Just a short message. Coming back. Shit didn't work out. When he returned, something about him had changed. He was quieter. Always looking over his shoulder. He had this nervous tic, tapping his fingers in strange sequences, over and over. I asked him about it once, and he laughed it off. Said it was a habit he picked up at school. But something told me that wasn't the truth. Then the whispers started. People around town said they saw Casey late at night, wandering near the old factory at the edge of the woods, the one that closed down back in the 90s after that fire. A few said they saw lights inside. I didn't believe it. We used to explore that place as kids. It was a dead shell of a building, nothing more. But one night, he asked me to meet him there. He sounded different on the phone. Urgent. His voice trembled. I need you, man. You're the only one I can trust. Something's happening and I can't fix it alone. I should have known then. I should have heard the panic in his voice for what it was, a warning. But I went. The factory was pitch dark when I arrived. I parked a ways off and walked the rest of the way, flashlight in one hand, phone in the other. The building loomed like a black tooth against the sky, its windows shattered and half boarded up. I called his name, once. Twice. Nothing. Then I saw the light. A single dim bulb hanging in one of the back rooms, flickering like it didn't want to stay alive. And beneath it, a figure. Slumped over. Still. I moved closer, heart pounding, footsteps echoing on cracked tile. It wasn't Casey. It was someone else. A man I didn't recognize, pale, blood on his shirt, his face twisted in some kind of horrible grimace. And next to him, on the floor, was something I still can't explain, symbols scratched into the concrete, not spray paint, not marker, scratched. Deep. I turned to run. And that's when Casey stepped out of the shadows. His eyes were wide, glassy. His clothes were torn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. And what he said next chilled me to the bone. You shouldn't have come. I froze. Those words, you shouldn't have come, they weren't a warning. They weren't a threat. They were almost regretful. Like he really, truly wished I hadn't been there. His face twisted when he saw me, like something inside him broke. "What the hell is going on, Casey?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked past me, back toward the slumped figure. He walked over slowly, knelt beside the body, and whispered something under his breath. I couldn't hear it all, but I caught fragments. "Wasn't supposed to be like this, too soon, no time." Then he stood, looked at me, and said something that made my stomach twist. "Do you still have that silver keychain I gave you in 9th grade?" That question came out of nowhere. The keychain, a small, flat disc with a wolf etched into it, was something he gave me on my 15th birthday. I hadn't thought about it in years. It was still in a drawer in my bedroom, covered in dust. Yeah, I think so." "Why?" He stared at me for a long time. "Too long." And then he said, "If you still trust me, don't come back here. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not ever. And whatever happens, don't talk to anyone from the riverside of town. Don't ask questions. Don't go looking for me." I was stunned. "You called me here, Casey." "I know," he said, rubbing his face. "That was a mistake." And then he walked off, past the dead man, past the flickering light, and disappeared into a corridor I didn't even realize was still standing. I didn't follow. I should have. But something deep in my chest told me not to. Not because I was afraid, though I was, but because the rules of the world I knew no longer applied inside that place. I don't know how else to describe it. The air felt wrong. The shadows bent differently. My flashlight flickered even though the batteries were new. The floor creaked behind me when I stood still. I left. I got in my car. I drove straight home. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling until morning, thinking about Casey, the dead man, the symbols. Thinking about that damn keychain. I didn't hear from Casey again for 2 weeks. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text. "Do you still have the keychain?" That was it. No greeting. No explanation. Just the question again. I texted back. "Yes. Are you okay?" No response. A few days later, weird things started happening. It began small. A newspaper showed up on my porch, but it wasn't today's paper. It was dated October 13, 1992. The ink was faded, but the main headline caught my eye. "Body found near abandoned mill. Second victim this month." I tried to laugh it off. Some weird prank, maybe. But no one else knew what happened at the factory. I never told anyone. Not even my girlfriend at the time. A week later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. A child's voice, soft, almost too quiet to hear. "He gave it to you, don't lose it, it has to be you now." I didn't sleep that night either. Then came the photo. No return address. Just an envelope in my mailbox, with a single Polaroid inside. A blurry shot of me and Casey when we were kids, sitting in the treehouse we built in 2004. I remembered that summer. But what made my blood run cold was the background. Behind us, in the trees, barely visible, was a man in a long coat. Watching. And he was holding the same keychain Casey gave me. Clear as day. I tried calling Casey. His number was disconnected. I drove to his house. The front door was open, slightly ajar. No one answered when I knocked. Inside, the place was a mess, drawers pulled out, papers everywhere, food rotting on the counter. But what struck me most was what I found in his room. On the wall above his desk was a giant map of our town, hand-drawn, with red XS marked all around the perimeter. Most of them were clustered near the woods. Near the river. And written in black marker at the bottom of the map were the words. "Don't let it wake up." Underneath, a single piece of tape held up a photograph, a blurry photo of the factory from the outside, at night. In the corner of the image, in faint red ink, someone had scribbled. It's still down there. I left the house. I haven't been back since. That was almost a year ago. I've tried to move on. Tried to ignore the nightmares. The strange phone calls. The feeling that someone is watching. I've tried to believe that Casey had a breakdown, that maybe I did too. That there's a rational explanation for all of this. But 2 nights ago, I went to the back of my closet and pulled out that old keychain. It was warm. And etched into the back, where there used to be nothing, were 3 new letters. ACT. I didn't put them there. And I have no idea what they mean. But I think I'm going to find out. Soon. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The keychain wasn't just some relic from our teenage years. It was changing. Or maybe it had always been more than it seemed, and I just hadn't noticed until now. The 3 letters carved into the back, ACT, didn't mean anything to me. Not yet. But they burned into my mind like a brand. That night, I couldn't sleep again. So I did what I always do when my brain won't shut off, I drove. Around 2 a.m., I found myself parked outside the old town library. It was closed, obviously, but the back door? Still broken from a storm last year. I'd worked there for a summer after high school, so I knew the layout by heart. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Just, something. Anything. Something to tell me I wasn't crazy. I started with the archives, the microfilm machines down in the basement. The air down there always smelled like old paper and mildew, and the flickering fluorescence made the whole place feel like a morgue. I began scanning newspapers from the early 90s, around the time that burned-out factory was still operational. And that's when I found the first article. October 7, 1992. Third worker goes missing at Trenton Paper Mill. Management denies connection. The article mentioned the factory by name, Trenton Paper Mill. Said 3 workers had disappeared over the course of 6 weeks. Local police had no evidence of foul play, but residents were concerned. One quote from a shift supervisor stuck out to me. They say it's just people quitting without notice. But I've worked here 20 years. These men left their lunch pails. One of them left his kid in the parking lot. Nobody just walks out like that. The article ended with a line that gave me chills. Several employees reported seeing strange lights in the subbasement. Management insists the area was sealed off after the 1989 incident. The 1989 incident. I searched for more. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. There were 7 missing persons connected to that factory in the span of a year. No bodies found. No investigations pursued past a certain point. And then, silence. After 1993, the place was shuttered. Condemned. Forgotten. But in the last article before the paper stopped reporting on it, I found something that made my blood run cold. An anonymous whistleblower claims management was involved in something beyond paper production. Mentions of audio testing and symbolic barrier protocols raise questions. Audio testing? Symbolic barriers? None of this made sense. And then I saw the name. The article quoted a former factory worker, initials only. ACT. I sat there staring at the screen until my eyes burned. That couldn't be coincidence. The initials on the keychain, and now here. In a newspaper that hadn't seen daylight since before I was born. I printed the article and took it home with me. When I got back, my front door was open. Just a crack. I live alone. I never leave it open. Every part of my body was screaming don't go in, but I did. The house looked untouched. Nothing was missing. Nothing broken. Except the photo. The one with me and Casey in the treehouse. It was gone. I kept it tucked inside a drawer. Now the drawer was empty. And in its place was a note. Plain white paper. Block letters. No handwriting. You're not the first. But you might be the last. Ask her about the tunnel. No name. No signature. Just that. Her? I didn't know who she was. But I had a guess. Mrs. Llewellyn. She was our sixth-grade teacher. She taught history, wore thick glasses, and smelled like old cedar. Everyone thought she was weird, mostly because she lived in that huge Victorian house near the river, the one surrounded by dead trees and always covered in fog no matter the weather. But more than that, she knew things. She used to say things in class like, "History repeats because no one listens the first time." Or my personal favorite, "Symbols matter more than facts. People forget facts." I hadn't seen her in over a decade. I had no idea if she still lived there. But at that point, I had nothing to lose. The next day, I drove out to her house. It looked exactly the same, like time had frozen it in place. The porch sagged slightly. The wind chimes were still made of antique keys. And the mailbox had one single word carved into the side. Acta. I knocked once. No answer. I was about to leave when the door creaked open on its own. I stood there on the porch like an idiot, unsure if I was about to meet a ghost or get arrested. "Come in, Daniel," said a voice from the dark hallway. My stomach dropped. No one had called me Daniel in years. Everyone just calls me Dan. But somehow, she still remembered. Mrs. Llewellyn didn't look like she'd aged a day. Same gray bun. Same long maroon cardigan. Same sharp, unreadable eyes behind thick lenses. As I stepped into the hallway, the door shut behind me with a mechanical click that felt too intentional to be just the wind. "You kept the keychain, didn't you?" she asked. I hadn't even mentioned it. "Yeah," I replied. "How did you?" But she was already walking, her steps soft and deliberate on the hardwood floor. The house was dark, lit only by sunlight filtering through old lace curtains. Everything smelled like cloves, dry paper, and something else, something metallic. She led me into what I assumed was her study. Bookshelves lined every wall, floor to ceiling, each shelf overstuffed with old volumes, folders, binders, newspapers, and rolled-up blueprints. But what caught my attention was the floor. In the middle of the room, a large section of the wooden boards had been removed, revealing a rectangular pit, not deep, maybe 4 feet, lined with bricks. Inside were symbols painted in a dull red circle. And right in the center, a small metal grate. "You're standing above the tunnel," she said, settling into a worn armchair. I stared at it. "That's it? The tunnel?" "No," she said calmly. "This is an access point. One of many. The actual tunnel runs beneath the town, from the river to the mill. And farther." "Farther where?" She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured to a folder on the desk. I opened it. Inside were photos, grainy black and white images, clearly taken with an old camera. Most showed the tunnel's interior, concrete walls lined with thick wires, rusted pipes, strange runes scratched along the stone. In one of the photos, a man stood alone in the tunnel, facing the wall. He wore a coat too large for his frame. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle. And his left hand was pressed against a symbol that looked exactly like the one I'd seen at the factory. The same jagged spiral nested inside a triangle. Almost like a warning. Or a seal. I looked closer, the man's face wasn't visible. "Is that Casey?" I asked. She didn't blink. "No," she said. "But he's part of it now. Just like his father was." Her words hit me like a punch. His father? He disappeared in 1997, yes. I know. She turned and opened a drawer. Pulled out a worn binder labeled TACT. "The keychain," she said, "isn't just a memento. It's a tag. A pass. A lock. Depends who holds it." I opened the binder. Inside were handwritten notes, diagrams, old cassette tapes labeled with numbers, and a long, detailed report that looked like something out of a declassified government file. The first page read, TACT, Tunnel Access Control and Transmission Project. EST 1972, terminated, officially, in 1993. Location, Trenton Mill, Oregon. Over the next hour, she told me what she knew, or what she claimed to know. That during the Cold War, the US government had been involved in deep structure audio experiments. Not just radio frequencies, but resonance. Sounds that could affect human thought, mood, even memory. The tunnels were part of a containment system, not to keep people out, but to keep something in. Something they'd accidentally activated while testing low-frequency signals beneath the town. And then, they lost control. She showed me a list of names, employees, researchers, civilian proxies. At the bottom of the page. Raymond Talbot, technician, last seen October 1992. Father, Casey Talbot Sr. Son, Casey Talbot Jr., Subject 8. My stomach turned. I didn't know his dad worked at the factory, I said. Very few did, she replied. And even fewer know that his son was marked when the father disappeared. Marked? She nodded. The children of the infected see things. Hear things. Sometimes they're used as conduits. Sometimes, something worse. My mouth was dry. I asked her the only question I could manage. Why me? She looked at me for a long time. Then she said. Because he gave you the key. And that means he chose you. That night, I went home and couldn't stop thinking about something else she said, almost in passing. You remember less than you think you do. At first, I assumed it was metaphorical. About trauma. Suppressed memories. But something about her tone told me otherwise. I started digging through old boxes, photos, notebooks, birthday cards, anything from my childhood. I was looking for a pattern, a clue, anything. That's when I found the drawing. A torn sheet of lined paper, probably second or third grade. Crayon scrawls. A sketch of two stick figures standing in front of a large spiral tunnel. One had a red circle on its chest. The other had black excess for eyes. In the corner, written in shaky handwriting. Me and Casey. Before the hum started. The hum. It triggered something. A sound I hadn't thought of in years. A low, droning vibration I used to hear in my room at night as a kid. I'd told my parents, but they said it was just the fridge or my imagination. But it wasn't. I remember waking up sweating, ears ringing. I remember nosebleeds. I remember Casey saying he could hear voices in it. I thought it was just our imaginations running wild. But what if it wasn't? What if the hum never stopped? What if it's still there, just under the surface, and we've just forgotten how to listen? For the next 3 days, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear it, that low, droning hum, like a distant engine buried beneath the earth. It wasn't loud. It wasn't constant. But when it came, I felt it in my teeth, my bones, behind my eyes. Sometimes, I'd hear voices in it. Not words, just tones. Human, but wrong. I called out of work. Stopped answering messages. Even blocked my girlfriend's number. We hadn't spoken in months, but something told me she might be in danger just from talking to me. Because something was following me now. Not a person. Not exactly. But a presence. I'd see shapes in the reflection of windows. My phone would vibrate with no notifications. And one night, as I was brushing my teeth, the mirror fogged up without reason, and when I wiped it clear, there was a single word written on the glass. Remember. It was Mrs. Llewellyn who gave me the next piece. She left it on my porch in a box with no return address, just a post-it on top. When you're ready to see. Inside was a tape recorder. Old, dusty, but functional. Alongside it, a cassette labeled Subject 8, Final Observation. May 12, 2001. I played it. The recording was scratchy. Grainy. Male and female voices, distorted with age. Male voice, he's stable today. No outbursts since the exposure was reduced. Female voice, still hearing the resonance? Male, yes. Says it's deeper now. Like it's growing roots. Spreading. He drew another diagram. Shuffling paper. Female, what the hell is this? Male, looks like a cross-section. Tunnels, nerve clusters? Female, this symbol here. It matches the one from the Trenton breach. Male, quietly, do you think he's mapping it? Silence. Female, or it's mapping us. At the end of the tape, there was static. Then, something else. A hum. Not just heard, felt. It started low, then escalated. I threw the recorder across the room. And I sat there, on the floor, shaking. That night, I had the dream again. Only this time, it felt real. I was back at the factory. Only this time, it was pristine. The walls were clean, the floors freshly waxed. Machinery hummed in rhythm, pulsing like a heartbeat. And in the center of the room was a door, old, iron, bolted shut with 7 locks. Standing in front of it was Casey. But it wasn't the Casey I knew. He looked thinner. His eyes were dark, sunken, like they hadn't closed in years. His mouth moved, but I couldn't hear him, only the hum. It grew louder and louder until my ears felt like they were going to burst. Then he held something up. The keychain. He pointed to it. Then to the door. And then, the locks began to open. One by one. Slowly. I woke up screaming. And in my hand, in my actual hand, was the keychain. Only now, it was warm again. Hot, even. The engraving on the back had changed. It no longer said ACT. It said, when you turn it, IT turns you. I knew what I had to do. I went back to the factory. Only this time, I brought bolt cutters, gloves, and a flashlight with new batteries. The air was heavier than I remembered, thicker, like it was full of ash you couldn't see. My footsteps echoed too loudly. And as I reached the door to the sub-basement, the one that had been welded shut last time, I found it open. Not broken. Opened. Someone had gone in before me. I followed the stairs down, deeper than I remembered. The air grew colder. My breath fogged. I passed graffiti, rusted pipes, and finally entered a tunnel lined with stone and metal, the same tunnel from the photos. And at the far end, was a figure. Sitting cross-legged on the floor. Humming. Casey. He looked up as I approached. His eyes locked onto mine. Empty, but aware. You came, he whispered. I thought it would be you. What is this place? I asked, trembling. It's not a place, he said. It's a threshold. To what? He smiled. A tired, hopeless smile. To what's always been here. Then he pointed to the far wall. I turned my flashlight and saw it. A mass of symbols, etched deep into the concrete, layered over each other. Pulsing faintly, like veins. And in the center, a circular hatch. Not a door. Not human-made. Old. Ancient. With the exact same symbol that had appeared in my childhood drawing. The spiral triangle. You have the key, Casey said. It chose you because you remember. I don't remember anything. But you will, he said. Once you open it. I don't remember turning the key. I don't even remember stepping forward. One moment I was standing there, flashlight flickering in my shaking hands, the next, I was on the floor, staring up at a hatch that was no longer closed. It wasn't open either. Not really. It was gone. Just a round absence in the wall. A perfect circle of black so dense it felt wrong to look at. Like it was sucking in light, sound, time. And from inside that void came the hum. Only now I could hear the structure of it. Not just noise, but a pattern. Chords. A code. Behind me, Casey was speaking in a low whisper, rocking slowly back and forth. They left it here, he said. Buried it too shallow. Thought it wouldn't wake if they made us forget. Thought the signal would fail. But it remembers us. He looked up at me. Do you remember me? I couldn't answer. Because in that moment, I did remember. Not everything, not all at once, but pieces began falling into place like broken glass assembling itself backward. The field trips to nowhere. The fake fire drill where we spent an hour in the basement. The shrill feedback tone on the TV when the news would glitch. The nosebleeds. The mirror fog. The dreams. And Casey. Always Casey. Only, not always the same Casey. There were gaps. Versions. A dozen tiny shifts in my memory where the person I knew changed slightly, haircut, voice, attitude, like someone tweaking a script between rehearsals. And then I realized the awful truth. I didn't forget. I was made to forget. I staggered back from the hatch. My knees buckled. I'm not going in there, I whispered. I'm not. Casey didn't argue. He simply nodded. You don't have to. That's not your part. What part? I asked, my voice barely audible. He smiled, and it wasn't a comforting smile. It was hollow. Tired. Resigned. You're the key. I'm the lock. I didn't understand what he meant, until the room began to breathe. Walls flexed. Pipes groaned. The cymbals on the floor began to glow faint red, and the hum grew more complex, layered with what sounded like whispering voices, all speaking different languages, overlapping, interrupting, syncing. Casey stood slowly. Walked to the hatch. He turned to me one last time. Tell them, he said. Tell who? He didn't answer. He stepped into the void. And vanished. When I woke up, I was outside. Lying on the dirt near the riverbank. The sun was rising. My clothes were covered in dust. My flashlight was gone. So was the keychain. I stumbled home on foot, not trusting the roads, the cars, the lights. Everything felt fake. Hollow. At home, nothing had changed. Except for one thing. On my living room wall, someone had etched a single sentence, deep into the plaster. Remember the sound. It will call you again. And beneath it, a date. October 13th, 2031. 6 years from now. I haven't seen Casey since. I tried to find Mrs. Llewellyn, but her house was empty. Realtor said it's been vacant for over a decade. No record of ownership. No taxes. No files. The tapes? Gone. The tunnel? When I returned with a friend 2 weeks later, the entrance was sealed. Not welded, rebuilt. As if it never existed. And yet, I still hear the hum. Late at night. Through the floorboards. In the silence between breaths. When it rains. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's alive, or if it's something else, older than thought, deeper than meaning. But I know it's watching. Listening. And when the day comes, that day in 2031, I'll be ready. Or maybe I won't be. But either way, I'll remember. End of post. Edit 1, 10 hours later someone DM'd me. No name. Just a voice message. 4 seconds of silence. Then a soft hum. Then a whisper. He didn't go into the tunnel. He became the tunnel.